And I think we had 3 scanners, and we're all climbing up on these ruins on the rocks. Paul was at the base and just yelling at us. It's like, you guys look like monkeys. Reality capture monkeys, right? So that name stuck with me.
Welcome to the Reality Capture Network, where we focus on technology-driven innovation, education, and community. The Reality Capture Network, bringing the future to you. On this episode of the RCN Podcast, the entrepreneur, reality capture, building documentation expert, and director at RC Monkeys Silviu Stoian.
I had the opportunity to get promoted quite quickly. I was running my own team, and we were providing BIM services and as-built services within Beck, also outside the company. So that's kind of how I got introduced to laser scanning and how I got introduced to the BIM process and Revit and Navisworks, all those tools that facilitate the BIM process.
It's important that we look at what is the requirement per project type or per industry. Then we approach with a plan.
We are reverse engineering the building. So we're deconstructing it, and then we're assembling it back in a virtual environment. And in order to do that, we need to have a lot of patience and to have attention to detail. There's no other way. Like, there are too many moving parts, many components. That attention to detail matters.
All right, welcome to the Reality Capture Network podcast. Today, we are excited to have Silviu joining us. Thanks for coming on the podcast to share with us today.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
I know we've had the pleasure of interacting with you in the past. We've done some webinars together. We've obviously some shared connections in the industry. Excited to dig in though and share a bit more detail into your story with the community. So, as normal, I'm sure we're going to dig into some of the specifics about technology and use cases and business. But to start, I love digging into the story of the guest and the individual and hearing even the journey of like how they grew up and what inspired them to get into the industry that we're a part of. So would love for you to take us back however far you'd like in your journey of, growing up. Where are you from, and give us some of your story.
All right. Hopefully this will be interesting for some. But yeah, I grew up in Eastern Europe, Romania, more exactly, pretty tough upbringing, as you can imagine, and going through some, experiencing a little bit the Eastern Bloc system, getting into the industry was. I wanted to become an architect. That was my dream. But there's only one architectural school in Bucharest, and it's a very, very tough admission program. I didn't get a tutor in time to prepare me for the exam, so I guess I only had 2 more options, and decided to go into structural engineering. Right? So that's kind of how I got into the industry. I always kind of liked drafting and architecture, but given the circumstances, I didn't want to lose a year. So I was good at math, physics, and decided to go into engineering. And from there, my journey started. About, I would say, 2.5 years into the program, I was quite interested in drafting. And I was adding a little bit too much detail into my drawings. And one of my professors actually asked me, "Hey, would you be interested in a summer job?" And I said, "Sure, yeah. What is the job?" He's like, "It probably is going to be a very interesting job for you, and you'll learn a lot." And I asked, "Can I bring a friend?" Right? You always have like a buddy, right? So I said, "Can I bring a friend?" So we met with the owner of this company, and he said, "Hey, I've heard that you guys want to work this summer." Yep. All right. See you on Monday, 8 a.m. on the construction site. So about halfway through the program, which is a 5-year program, I got his job on a active construction site to represent the owners. I worked for a company doing being the owner's rep. And we were checking every single element that went into place, right? So from digging the foundations to commissioning the building. And I was on a large project and we were tackling the residential side. So we're doing 5-story condo buildings. And I was there for 2 years on this construction site until I graduated. After that, I got promoted, and they gave me my own construction site, which was terrifying. As you can imagine, I was checking quality for these 14, 15-story buildings. Right? Me, a 24-year-old, trying to say this is good, this is not good. But I did have an excellent mentor on my first construction site. And this first job, I was there for 3 years until I decided to move to the United States. This first job gave me the foundation. Not only that I've learned how buildings go together, but also the things that I've learned in school made sense.
Yeah.
So that was a huge benefit. But then, I always wanted to come to the United States. So what's funny is there's this program called the diversity program or diversity lottery, right? Where they give away about 50,000 visas every year to people that qualify around the world. So I signed up my parents without them knowing, because I wanted to come to the United States.
Wow.
So I did that. And, my dad got an envelope like, what is this all about? And I said, yeah, I signed you up for this program. I guess you got selected. Look in the envelope. There are only 3 forms to fill out. I sent out to the, Homeland Security. It was for my mom, my dad, and my sister. There's no form for me. Right.
Oh.
So I called the number on the, on the forms, and they told me, oh, we're so sorry. By the time you go through the program, you're going to be over 21, so you're going to be an adult. You're going to be on your own, so you're not part of the family anymore.
Oh.
My parents left the United States, and I stayed, right? But I still wanted to come, so I applied to the program on my own, and I got selected. I went through it, and we got our visas right after I graduated my undergrad in 2008. That end of the year, the recession started. We didn't know anything about recessions, right? In December 2008, we decided to come to the United States just to visit, just to see, tip our toes in the water, see how things look. And I hated it. We traveled for about a month or so. We went snowboarding. We went to Chicago. We spent some time with family here in Atlanta. But I didn't like it. It was a cultural shock. So we went back, and things started to squeak economically in Eastern Europe. Right. So then just one night, just a month later, said, hey, let's give it a try. And then at the end of February, we had everything sold and moved to the United States.
Wow. What a big move.
Yeah, it was, but at least we had family here. So, my parents lived here, my sister, my extended family. I was the only one that was left in Romania. So, to my surprise, I thought, it's like, okay, I graduated, I have experience. I'm going to be able to get a job quite quickly, not knowing what a recession was.
Mm-hmm.
So, about 6 months into it, not even one call back, sent a lot of resumes. I didn't know anyone in the industry. So I decided to go back to school. So I said, okay, what can I do? I'm going to pursue a master's in structural engineering at Georgia Tech. So that's pretty much what I did. In the meantime, I was driving a choo-choo train in a mall.
Yeah. Hey.
Right, electric choo-choo train. And,
whatever helps you get by, right?
Pay the bills.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So that was fun. But to my surprise, again, during the master's program, I had to redo a lot of the classes that I already did just a few years prior. There's a lot of theory, not a lot of interest on my end. And I had to wait many years until I graduated. So somebody told me, hey, there's another school just, a few miles north. That was a satellite at one point for Georgia Tech. Southern Poly, now it's Kennesaw University. And they have a program that is targeted for the more hands-on and is construction management program. So while I was still going at Georgia Tech, I started the other program just to get a feel of if there's any difference. And it was. The first semester, I got introduced to BIM. I got introduced to Revit, right? So this was early 2010. And, I was like, wow, this is something I've never heard of, never worked with. And, it got my attention, right? I love computers and I love technology. And it's like, oh, if I can combine construction or engineering or architecture and utilize some of this technology, that would be wonderful. And then I got a position there as a teaching assistant. And then, in a closet somewhere, there's a tripod with a scanner on it.
Oh, man.
Right? I said, what is this? And it was an old folk Faro Fusion. I think it was, Fusion, right? The big, bulky, heavy units. So I said, what is this? And, one of my professors said, it's a scanner. This is what they're used for. But we don't know how to use it. Right? So, but in a few months, we're going to get the new version. So that was the Focus X. I think it was 150 at that point.
120.
Yeah, 120. So, and during that time, there was the devastating earthquake in Haiti. And at our school, we were trying to use rubble to build structures. And we're trying to test out if, how would that structure react to certain loads, lateral loads and dead loads, things like that. And they had all these reflectors on the structure that they were monitoring with a toll station. So I asked, can I use one of those scanners to monitor and compare the data? I don't know how to register it yet, but I'll figure it out. So that's kind of how I got introduced to laser scanning and how I got introduced to the BIM process and Revit and Navisworks, all those tools that facilitate the BIM process. And from there, I still didn't have a job. It was like 2011. I was still driving the train now during the weekend, but I still couldn't get my foot in the door. So during the last semester, I got a scholarship, industry board or industry advisory board scholarship. And, they gave me one of those big checks and I kind of figured out who was on the board. And then I emailed them after the event. Said, hey, remember you gave me that check? Do you know anyone that might be interested or might have an opening in the next few months? I'm going to graduate. I got only one response, and that was the director of operations from the Beck Group. They called me for an interview. And I remember, I interviewed with, one of my best friends now, and a very tough project manager. And I went on the job site and they were hiring a field engineer, a project engineer. So you have to deal with a lot of paperwork, submittals, things like that, reviewing shop drawings. So, they wanted to ask me about my experience in that regard. And I keep pivoting. I was like, let me tell you what we can do with all these tools, right? With Revit, Navisworks, scanning, and they would go back to their default questions. And I kept going, as kind of changing the topic all the time. I was like, man, I blew it. My friend's like, hey, this was a great interview. We'll call you. I didn't expect a call back. But I did get a call back from the project manager and said, sorry, you're not a good fit, but there's somebody in our Atlanta office that might be interested in talking to you, right? So I went there, I interviewed with, I think 5 guys that day. And it was a long day. And I got a job at the Beck Group in 2011 before I graduated. And my first job there, I was working for the estimating department, but just a month into it, I got to work on one of the largest, I'll say as-built or scan-to-build projects. And we documented 4.8 million square feet for GSA in downtown Atlanta. And it took 8 months.
Oh man!
Right. So that was my introduction to a real project where we use the technology, things that I've learned and I experimented with. And from that point forward, I had the opportunity to get promoted quite quickly in about, I think, 3 years or so. I was running my own team, and we were providing BIM services and as-built services within Beck and also outside the company. So I spent about 7 years with Beck, and was an amazing environment to learn, to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. They invested a lot in their people. I got a chance to work with some of the best people in the industry, like Aaron Maller and Kelly Cohn, James Norris, all those people that right now they might they own their own companies, or they have very cool jobs for software companies.
Yeah.
Right. So they were great influences and for me, and I've learned a lot from them.
That's great.
And then from that point forward, was kind of a crazy ride, absorbing as much as I could. But 7 years into it, actually, I don't remember exactly what was the reason why I decided to go on my own, to be honest. Now, like, thinking back, it's like, I know that they were putting me through this leadership program. And the CEO of the company, Fred Paul, he had a speech. It was very influential. And that was definitely a motivator, or going on my own, taking a risk, taking a leap, and just do it.
Yeah.
Right. So 2008. Yeah, it's going to be 5 years this year. I decided to go on my own and specialize on scan to BIM or reality capture services. So that was the beginning of RC Monkeys.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now I do have to ask, since you bring the name up, how did you choose the name RC Monkeys?
Actually, it was not me that came up with the name. There's this group called Volterra Detroit Foundation. And 2016, I believe it was the first workshop, but they're organizing these reality capture workshops in Volterra, Italy. And they're run by Mark Dietrich.
Okay.
So I attended, right? I attended because I wanted to see that part of the world, and hopefully, learn something. But it was a very cool team. Like, everyone they were experts in their field. And on the team, or the attendees, was Paul Aubin. And we were documenting or scanning a amphitheater, a Roman amphitheater, and I think we had 3 scanners, and we're all climbing up on these ruins on the rocks. And Paul was at the base and just yelling at us. It's like, you guys look like monkeys. You look like reality capture monkeys, right? So, because you know how it is when you scan, right? You get dirty, you get everywhere, just to get that perfect or optimal point of view. So that name stuck with me. So once I decided to go on my own, I wondered, everyone is using their name, their or some acronyms. I said, I'll do it. I'll do something different. This might be unorthodox and maybe childish, but I'll just name it RC Monkeys.
Nice.
Easy to remember.
Hey, it came from a work experience. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, from some of your background, you've always had attention to detail and quality, which is kind of where you talk about your first opportunity to, intern with a company is because you're during education, your professor or someone, identified that and said, hey, you were doing too much detail. You're doing extra. You could do more. We want you to work with us. It feels like that's probably been a big, important part to you is an eye for quality. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about maybe why you think that quality is important. And maybe attention to detail. I feel like in the industry, there are some people that, want to go quick, want to capture as much as possible, be as cheap as possible. Mm-hmm. And then there are some people that you just notice are putting a high focus on the accuracy or the detail. I'd love for you to share a little bit of your thought around that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to detail, I think, or attention to detail, it can be a plus, can be a attribute, quality, but also can work against you, right? You could spend too much time focusing on the details and not moving forward. But when it comes to what we're doing, right? There are different types of products out there. Sometimes, you can go into a quick capture. Sometimes you need that attention to detail to understand how things go together. What I like to do is, and this is how I kind of think, and this is how I try to train my team, is think about what we're doing. We are reverse engineering, right? The building. So we're deconstructing it, and then we're assembling it back in a virtual environment. And in order to do that, we need to have a lot of patience and to have attention to detail. There's no other way. Like, there are too many moving parts, too many components, and that attention to detail matters. Maybe it's not needed for the entire team, but you need to have components within that team that will help you achieve a quality product. And again, quality, when you think about quality, what does that mean, right? It is high accuracy. Is it high detail? Is high level of development? Not necessarily. Quality just means meeting specs, right? That's it. So you need to understand the spec, and then use your abilities to see if you do have the competency to meet the spec. If you don't, you're in big trouble, and you should refer your client to somebody else.
Yeah.
But as long as you can meet the specs, that means you put together a quality product, right? And this kind of makes me think back. There's this, I think, blog post done by Seth Godin, right? The godfather of marketing, right? And he was talking about quality in the 80s. So he was, I think, asking a question. What was a Rolls-Royce a better quality product than a Toyota Corolla? And the answer was no. The Corolla was a much higher product in terms of quality than the Rolls-Royce, because the Toyota met the spec, whereas the Rolls-Royce, things broke down all the time. Yeah,
that's a great point to bring up, and that's where I feel like we talk about this a lot in the industry. Is it's important that we look at what is the spec or what is the requirement per project type or per industry, and then we approach with a plan of what technology needs to be used or what workflow needs to be used. And I know this is something you've looked at quite a bit. It was one of the webinars we did was comparing data, looking at different devices, and not to take the approach of there is a one device that meets everything, or that cheaper devices are terrible. It really comes down to what do they do and how are we using them. I think the danger is that there's a lot of people that unfortunately run out and just want to get the cheapest because it's cheaper, or they want to get this version because it's faster, and then you end up using the wrong tool. So I think you're right. It comes down to what's the spec or what's the requirement, and how do we optimize getting it the best way we can that is saving the client money but is getting the quality that's needed. Is not overkill, it's not underkill, really engineering for that use case.
And I think your comment here is a very excellent segue into I guess the next topic, which we talked about spec. Who's defining the spec?
Yep.
You had an interview with on the other channel, Apex.
Yep.
Very interesting people, right? And I've learned from one of them last year that when it comes to specs, it is very dangerous to accept when clients self-diagnose. right? Their diagnosis might be correct, but you want to help them explore that, right? So this is very interesting when they come to you with a spec. Take that with a grain of salt. And instead of responding and trying to put together a solution that satisfies the spec, I would say, let's explore your problems. Let's talk, let's go deep, and let's understand what are your problems. What are we trying to solve here? And maybe your spec is correct, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that what you're getting out of this is the highest value, right? Let's put price aside and cost and all that and focus on the value. And there are instances where we, as the service provider, we should be viewed as the experts and sit there and listen to what needs to be solved and then define the spec for the client.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think there's a big need for that. So, we end up seeing that a lot of clients have very limited knowledge internally when it comes to the technologies that we talk a lot about, LiDAR and laser scanners and terrestrial scanners and mobile scanners or photogrammetry and, getting data into models. And there's so many different technologies and workflows that have different outcomes and different accuracies. And we find that a lot of clients that are starting to learn about these technologies, they want it done on their job, but they don't have enough knowledge to know exactly how to frame, here's the workflow we want and here's why. And they do their best to throw out and say, hey, we want a scan done. But there's not enough detail to help really get to what the ultimate goal should be. Now, the other challenge I see is that there's also a lot of providers that don't have the knowledge either. They have a piece of gear and they don't know the best workflow. And so sometimes if the client opens it up to education and you have the wrong person to educate, there's not very many good industry guides or, there's no certifications yet to say, hey, this person has this level of knowledge or authority. Or so there's a bit of congestion in whether from both sides, from service providers and from maybe the people requesting the services, to really know what that optimum spec or process or value should be. And that's where I think that we do at some point need a larger industry adopted standard guideline for different types of approaches or education both to services and to owners to try to make that a little more easy to integrate.
I completely agree. And a few weeks ago, this is a very interesting story that happened to me where a completely new client reached out to me, and I always have a discovery meeting with the client. Before we propose, before we agree on anything, it's just to make sure it's a good fit. We analyze values, we analyze budget in a way, and we also analyze the competency. Do we have the competency? Well, what's interesting, after that discovery meeting, there was another large firm that they were bidding for this job. And after a few weeks, the owner said, hey, I think we're going to go with you guys. It'll be more expensive. But the other guys, they kept asking us questions. I was like, what resolution do you want? What, should we do this or that? It's like, I don't know. I'm just a developer, right? I don't know what I need. I'll tell you my problems, and hopefully you can come up with a solution, right? So it's interesting that they went with a smaller firm, and because we nailed down the solution in 15 minutes during the first meeting, but he was trying to wait for the a quote from the other company, but the other company was like playing ping pong and like, what do you need? Do you need this or that? I don't know, right? So that's, I think you're right. But then you need to have that deep level of understanding and to say, instead of chasing the dollar, be there to actually help the client, like truly and honestly trying to help the client. And if Matt, you come to me with a problem and I'm not specialized, I might have a general understanding and maybe I can help, I'll tell you that. we can help. We're not the best at it. We can help. Or if you're more comfortable, I can recommend you to another company that I know they do this work in and out, day in and day out, right? It's just the client will be better served that way.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that happens when you look at the growth of these technologies, and the adoption is growing, the interest from clients are growing, the opportunity is growing. And so a lot of times a business who their core focus is architecture or mechanical engineering or construction or something else, they see that they're starting to need scanning, and instead of working with an expert or working with a company that specializes in that, they just go, oh, it's cheap enough, we can just buy a scanner. And then they're like, man, this is a lot more than we thought. We thought we just buy a scanner and we can have our engineer go out and just scan. And you end up finding there's a level of expertise, there's a level of knowledge, there's a level of training, there's different software platforms you have to have, there's different control processes you need to understand. There's a lot that goes into reality capture, whether we're talking LiDAR, drones, photogrammetry, that it is specialized, and it's not as easy as some people make it sound of just, oh, the latest technology, you just buy it, press the start button, and it scanned your whole project. It's not that easy. And we see more and more companies say, let's start this as a business group without really knowing that much about it. And then this happens that you're talking about. You get 3 proposals on a project, or an owner or a GC or whoever's requesting the job gets 3 proposals on a project, and they're all over the place from $5,000 to $20,000. And they're, one says it's going to take 3 days and one says it's going to take 3 weeks. And because a lot of that knowledge is, it's not standardized yet. They don't even know how to evaluate the proposals. And so it does come down to needing to know who in the industry or what organization or what standards, like how do we even evaluate the proposals, or what language do we need, or what approaches should we be looking at for this type of work. And I think that the more that we as a community of people that work in this industry and understand these technologies, the more that we can work together to start trying to educate on this and create those types of standards and guidelines and workflows, it'll help the industry in whole, because the negative effect of that situation where 3 proposals are so different, or the negative effect of someone who doesn't actually know what they're doing works on a project and does bad quality, it holds back the entire industry from growing and the entire opportunity from continuing to increase, because then people start not trusting the technology, even though it might be a user problem, or they think it just doesn't work, it's not good enough, or they look at what should have been the price and they think it's overpriced when really the other one was underpriced. There's so many layers to maybe some of the challenges in the industry, but I think there are paths forward that we can fix some of them. Yeah.
And also, you mentioned the proposals, right? That is the first step, evaluating the companies. Are they a good fit for me as a client? But then, they do the work, they deliver the work. How do I check? How do I check that they deliver what they promised? Right? And, usually there are different stakeholders involved. If they're doing just a scan or even a model, that product will be delivered to all of these stakeholders. And they're going to start to use it, and they'll find mistakes. And at that point, it's too late to go back and it's like, I picked the wrong company. And you might send the product back to fix it. But as you said, maybe they just started in the industry. They thought things are easy, and they don't have the advanced expertise to fix their mistakes.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, you mentioned standards, right? We do have standards for level of detail. We have standards for level of accuracy. And when it comes to accuracy, the standard stipulates a range, right? I'll give you an example, right? LOA 30, level of accuracy 30. That means your object, as long as it is within plus minus 5/8 of an inch from the point cloud, from the real world, is meeting the spec. But there might be, maybe there's somebody that decides, hey, we're going to be, to save time and make the project more profitable, we're going to be slightly sloppy. You're just going to place all these elements. As long as they're within that plus minus 5/8 of an inch, which gives you an inch and a quarter fluff, we're good, right? But that's not fair to the client. Even though you have that range, right, according to the standard, you should still try to do a best fit, right, within reason, right? If your goal is to idealize a model, for instance, where you have your elements square, plumb, orthogonal, then you're going to introduce some error, but be very conscious about the error that you introduce and try to do a best fit. So your product is the closest representation of what's out there in the field.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple questions I want to dig into a little bit. So, one, I think you have chosen to focus on an industry that maybe is not as common for a lot of people in our industry. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
You mean niching down?
Yeah, well, that, but also maybe why you chose to focus on what you do. And
yeah, so it was interesting. While I was at Beck, we were doing about 65 to maybe 80 projects every year, my team, right? And our goal was to use technology to bridge the gap between architecture and construction. And that was, in some instances, tools that were helping the BIM process. Other times was reality capture. Other times were, sensors and other types of technology that would help design and construction. But I like to, take things apart, right? It's like every building, at least for me, is like a puzzle. And especially when you don't have drawings, the puzzle is, it's like having one of those 1,000 piece puzzle. And the lines and the colors are kind of blurry, and you cannot, put them together. Once you get some drawings, you get some more information, things become a little bit more easier. But every building is unique. Every building is a puzzle. And that's what attracted me more towards reality capture. And one of the reasons for going into business for myself was to focus on creating as-builts or capturing the as-built environment. At Beck, it was a great environment for growing, but we were doing a lot other things than just reality capture.
Yeah.
So the only way I could control, I was kind of, in a way, it's kind of a selfish decision, because I want to do this, I know how to do it, and I'm just gonna go on my own and just take a risk. And but what was interesting when I started, I was just taking on any building, any project. If it required as-built documentation, scanning or photogrammetry or modeling, I would just take pretty much any type of building. But then I realized last year I went through a business bootcamp organized by The Future with Chris Doe. He was leading the effort, and he challenged us to niche down, right? To be specialized, because when you think about it, let's say you want to look for a plumber in your area, you're never going to type, give me average plumber in Boise, right? You always type, what's the best plumber in my area?
Yeah.
So you want to be the best, but how do you become the best? Is it by doing everything? No, by just picking a few things and trying to be the best at it, right? So then I looked at my portfolio and I realized there's a pattern. And the pattern was that more than 50% of the projects were historic buildings. And those were also the most challenging puzzles. There's some of them, they're over 100 years old. A lot of deflection, a lot of changes that have happened over the years, missing information. And then the construction technology has changed so much since, 19th century. So I just said, I did my research. There's no one company out there specialized in just documenting historic preservation or historic buildings, right? Or historic preservation for adaptive reuse, renovations. So I just decided this is going to be my niche. I'm going to pursue clients that do this kind of work. That doesn't mean, if an opportunity comes in from one of my existing clients and they say, hey, can you help me? I have an office building. Yeah, we'll do the office building, but it's not work that we will pursue.
Yeah.
So we just worked towards that goal to position ourselves in the market as an expert in documenting historic buildings. It might take a few years, until recently I was just a one-man show, and you know how hard it is to, write marketing material, to find clients, fulfill work, and all that stuff, right? So it is I'm growing, or the company's growing at a slow pace, or rather grow slower, and knowing that I'm making the right decisions, then grow too fast, lose control, and then the ones that are going to be suffering are the clients, because the quality of the product will go down.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Quality will be diluted.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that has made me so excited about the industry, and starting to put a shift on my focus from just personally, just from doing services to educating about the technology and educating about the industries and the opportunities, is that, doing this the last 12 years, we have been pulled into every industry, from forensics to historic preservation, to ships, to nuclear facilities, oil and gas, warehouses. There are applications and opportunity in every industry to have a mix of control processes and LiDAR and photogrammetry and modeling and analyzing data and helping with QC work. And when you stretch yourself and you do try to take on work in every industry, you're not the expert in it. You're not familiar with it. You don't know what maybe the engineer in a forensic job needs versus an architect, and this idea of, niching down and picking a lane to really become specialized in it lets you focus on research and learning about historic preservation and about the way older buildings were built, which then helps you learn how to create the models better and what types of clients might need that data. And there's a benefit for sure for companies to be able to niche down. And that's why I've now shifted and said, I enjoy the technology so much, and I enjoy seeing the opportunities fulfilled and businesses be able to start and grow or build departments and focus on it, that more companies need to do that. More companies need to focus on a specific lane, because it's I think that's where a lot of mistakes can happen, is that somebody thinks that starting a laser scanning company is this biggest opportunity, or starting a department, and that all you have to do is buy one scanner and you can go take on every industry. And that's where we see the issues, right? The wrong tool for the wrong job, or the wrong industry knowledge being applied. And so I think it really would help more companies to take a bit of a step back and kind of take that approach, if they're going to build into it, is figure out what and why and kind of focus in a bit.
Yeah, when I did my research last year, it was very interesting. I just called a few friends that own their own companies, providing reality capture services. And I asked them, why haven't you picked a niche, an industry or two, and focused on becoming the best at delivering to those, or catering to those type of clients? And the most common answer was, it is too risky. It's not enough work in one industry. So, but then the logic didn't, there's no, when it was like, okay, let's take, your company and that, company A, company B, C, D. So it's like, let's say 2,000 companies. They all do, let's say, $200,000 to $300,000 worth of work, or, historic work or historic preservation work. So we're talking about $6 million market, right? I'm just giving you an example. Probably the market is 100 million, but I'll give you an example. Yeah. So that means you're just getting a slice of the pie. but you could get half of the pie if you're good enough, right? So the fact that you can say that there's not enough work, but because you're not niche, people will now look for your name and say, hey, you know what? Company ABC is the best at documenting, and then you fill the gap. Lighthouses, right? We're going to call them.
Yeah.
But that is very uncommon in this industry and probably a lot of industries. And I think Chris Doe says that, what did he say? That riches are in the niches, right? Or something of that sort. So yeah, and not only that, but there's you can also, when you figured out a niche and you have an audience, right? That's the thing. Like, now I picked a niche and I have an audience. I know that I'm speaking with architects, preservationists, sometimes contractors, not a lot of times, mostly architects and preservationists. So now I can learn what they need. I can focus on their needs, and I can focus and craft my message to resonate with them, rather than having a general message to try to attract the masses. And Kevin Kelly says that you need 1,000 true fans. That's it.
Yeah,
1,000 true fans in order to build a successful business, right? And those are people that they will become loyal, and they'll understand the value that you produce, and they will buy whatever you're going to put out there, a service, a product, and you don't need more than that.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, people, when you start thinking about marketing and, social media stuff, a lot of people look at numbers of followers, and you're like, honestly, that really doesn't matter. How many clients would you need to keep yourself busy? Probably 5 or 10 really good ones.
Max.
You don't need 50,000,
and that's also, when you think about it, when it comes to the number of clients, if you limit the number of clients and say only going to take 10, right? And there's always, there's that gap between the melon and your ability to fulfill your capacity.
Yeah.
And your demand should be always slightly higher than your fulfillment capacity. As long as that exists, and the capacity is like above, you can create, it is engineered, but it's like real scarcity. Like, there are going to be more clients that want to get access to what you provide, but you can say, Matt, I'm sorry, we only take in, we can only serve 10 clients a year, and right now we don't have the capacity. So in that case, if your service is so good, you can increase the price a little bit until obviously the market needs to support it. But that's advantageous for both you and the client, right?
Yeah. And that's where, I really think that the industry in whole, in the adoption of all reality capture, laser scanning, drones, photogrammetry, scan to BIM, I think all of it is at the bottom of a growth curve. The adoption is growing, the interest is growing, the technology itself is becoming cheaper, it's becoming faster, it's becoming more accurate. The ways to get it into different softwares and design data and visualization is improving. Everything is getting faster and cheaper as far as the technology in whole. It's all the education around it is growing too. Businesses have been adopting it. You see certain types of projects in industry requiring that laser scanning is done and that scan to BIM is done on hospitals and airports and just so many different areas. The other reason that I think there's going to be so much growth is what we're talking about here, where when you are spread thin and you're working across all these different industries and all these different clients, if you try to get too many clients, you might just be fulfilling one quick job for them, and they may only be using it on the very beginning of a project. We'll use a construction job as an example. A lot of times a construction project says, we need to scan this building in the beginning because we don't have good as-builts. So you scan that job. Well, if you, instead of moving on to the next client and looking for more volume, if you actually dug in with that one client even deeper and put more focus on them, and you put, how can I put more value into that project, you could increase what you're doing on that job from just a one-time capture of an as-built to, hey, what if we establish a control network so that we can come back and we'll scan during construction and we'll help you do the QC against the design? Or, hey, what about if we came through with the photos and we gave you a weekly progress walk? So there's so much more you could do for that one client in that one industry type. And I think that the majority of the industry now is still only doing that, 10 or 20% of what they could be integrating into a project. So I think we're going to see more companies want to adopt it, and then the volume of work that goes into a single project grow when you integrate the right tools and the right service. I think that's one thing that is another benefit of narrowing in there.
That's excellent. This is kind of, I feel like this is taken from Alex Hormozzi's $100 million offers. One way you can increase your business or grow your business is through upselling and cross-selling. And what you described there is just upselling is selling more of the same thing, and cross-selling, selling services that are complementary to your base services, right? But obviously, in order to do that, there's one component, competency, right? So you can scan a building and be very good at scanning, putting the scans together, delivering that in a manner that's valuable for the beginning of the project. But then if the client asks you, like, hey, can you also run my coordination meetings? Ooh, that's a completely different skill.
Yep.
So definitely, if that is the path that a lot of companies will take, they'll need to have a multidisciplinary team that, they just they have defined roles within that team, and then once a phase is complete, another person takes over, and then but there's still niching, but within the company, because otherwise we're still going to be generalist, and I don't want to say it, but you might provide mediocre results.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's where again, anybody that wants to get into these technologies, yes, there is a lot of opportunity. Yes, there is a lot of need, but the best thing you can do is make sure that you're educating yourself on what types of technologies you're going to get into, how to get really good at that type of technology, what service you're going to offer, what you don't. And then, what that leads to next is what I also try to push a lot is that I think community and collaboration is another big part of us growing this industry in whole, because if a lot of us start niching down into certain technologies or certain industries, then having a community where you can build relationships and have connections and you can collaborate when you get to a project that maybe it needs survey control and you don't do survey, or maybe it needs the scanning but it needs mobile and you don't do mobile, or maybe it needs scan to BIM and you're only really good at capturing and you need someone to help with the modeling. Or I think collaboration is a way that we can help as these needs grow. Instead of you trying to take on everything because you want that income, you get really good at what you do that piece, and you team with and you build relationships with, and that way we can accomplish the project properly. The client's happy, the client does more work, and everybody wins. I think collaboration is a huge piece.
In that regard, is less stress, because you know that, okay, I'm the best at this phase of the project, and then company XYZ, they're specialized in this other service. Together, we can deliver a good product. And then there's going to be the cross-pollination between companies. And I'm going to talk to Matt. It's like, Matt, how do you guys do this? Not necessarily just processes, but also when it comes to business. How do you recruit? How do you, right? So there's going to be a lot more communication and collaboration between companies that, at this point, they are not direct competitors, even though they're operating within the same industry. They have their own niche.
Yep.
Right. So there's a benefit in sharing. Like, hey, Matt, this is our marketing strategy, or this is our recruiting strategies, and maybe it will help you, maybe not, but this is what we do, and it works for us. And if he's gonna help you, you're gonna become more successful. Then we might partner together on jobs that you bring in, and vice versa. So as a whole, I think we can grow as an industry, and we can learn from each other. And when it comes to business, that's probably the information is out there, but it's not aggregated.
Yeah.
Where do I start? I mean, you probably went through this. What do I do first, right? Do I build a business? Do I build a team? Do I go my own? Do I productize? Do I offer services? There's so much. And, if you start watching YouTube videos, like a lot of people, call it mental masturbation, right? Use like a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You procrastinate. There's so much information that you get into this, you freeze, right? It's like, I don't know what's good for me. And the path for success is quite long. And if you're on the right path, that's great. But if you're on the wrong path, you got to go back and try again. And in my opinion, I think what we're missing is information that's aggregated.
Yeah.
And it's not just for business, but it's like even for the technical part. Right now, if somebody wants to get into reality capture, there are no courses out there. How do I use this instrument? Why do I use it this way? What is the end goal? Right? And it's not just pushing the buttons, right? It's understanding a lot of aspects of the business.
And again, I think that's what I'm excited about with what we're doing with Reality Capture Network is I want to create that place that's going to help more people. I love scanning. I love modeling. I love doing project work, but I've identified and seen some of these same issues, and I look back at starting my business and trying to grow and like trying to learn from both technical and even the business side. And if we step out and we look at other industries, it's very normal that there are events that help you. There are people that teach you how to, if you're I'll say a realtor, right? There's realtors that all get together, even though they all sell and maybe they're competitive realtors, they all get together and they train together and you learn how to sell and you learn about the industry and you learn best practices, you train together. There's a process. You look at real estate and you look at, social media and marketing. There's entire conferences of marketers that get together to come learn best practices and hear. And a lot of times when I now step back and look at our industry, there's none of that really. There's a little bit of, there's some conferences that have a little bit of focus on construction technology, but there is no mastermind level. There's no community that you can join to have these conversations that help you start. And I also believe that I don't believe entrepreneurship itself or starting your own business is for everybody. I really don't. Though I think that there are people that want to do it, and I think that there are people that should, and I think that as our industry grows, there's a need for more businesses that specialize in these technologies. And so the idea of having a community that can together get on monthly calls or that can build some guidelines together, that can train each other on best practices, and then come together to a conference in person and actually build that community to help each other, just like we see in other industries, I think it's missing, and I think it would be so helpful. It's something that I wish, was around when I was starting. It's like, I love that idea because going to events, even if it didn't focus on that, building relationships with people in the industry has been my favorite part about, work is the relationships and the collaboration and the building. It's, and then when you also can give advice and you can help people and see them be successful with that advice, that's very rewarding as well. Because you see there are a lot of people that as they get in and start, it's a struggle. It's difficult. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're running a department in a company, or you're trying to start your own business, either way, these resources are needed.
Oh, definitely. Thinking about within companies, you start your own company. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't know what to start with first. Because, you need to bring money in, right? If you're alone, just to support you and your family, you have a team, make sure that, you have enough cash flow for payroll and all the other expenses. But, you just mentioned having programs and having education, a lot of times those programs or, they're what they were called at corporations, SOPs, right? Standard operation procedures do not exist. I don't know if that was your experience, maybe talking with other companies, but that's my experience. You talk to, various companies in the industry and it's like, hey, Bob, do you guys have this process documented? And if so, what is your process for documenting processes? What is the process of updating and improving that process? If you want to sell your company for some reason, what is the new owner going to get? The people or the system? And this is another thing that I've learned from Michael Gerber. I don't know if you're familiar with his books, The E-Myth.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that you're building a business that's not the product or the service that you're selling. Where the entire business is the product, right? So what does that product need? Right? It needs a team, it needs processes. But we don't put a lot of emphasis on internal education, on making sure that everything is standardized. And that might be because people, they say, I don't want to be putting up, in a box. But if you have a good starting point, you can also improve. Without having a good baseline, there's no improvement. Everyone is going to do whatever they think is best. And a lot of time, because of lack of experience, their decisions might not be the best decisions for the client.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you boil it down to kind of a simple thought. It's like a restaurant, right? If the restaurant chain didn't have a set way of doing things and a set recipe and a set way of cooking, every time you hired a new chef at this chain or this chain, you're going to have different outcomes. You're going to have different meals. One's going to be terrible. One's going to be amazing. If you want consistency in the quality of what you as an organization are going to deliver, you have to have that recipe so that as you grow or as you have different team members that come or go, or those processes are what can help you have a level of quality and a consistency in how you work and what you deliver and what people can expect from you.
I think you just used two very good words: consistency and recipe, right? And when you go and buy a Coke, you expect the same taste over and over.
You hope so.
If you go, you go to Europe or go to Mexico, and they're going to use cane sugar. You taste it, and it's like, this tastes different. I mean, you immediately sense that difference in taste, right? So what a client wants is to trust you that you consistently deliver the same level of quality. And you cannot achieve that level of quality and consistency without having internal systems.
And the other thing that I think is, and we already kind of have talked over this a bit, but it's right on the same conversation, is that one of the difficulties without good resources for training and education and delivery and all that is that the industry there is no standard recipe. If you hire 5 different companies to go scan a job right now, you're going to get 5 different results. You're going to have different quality, different accuracy, different scanners used, different file types delivered, different, one's going to be mobile, one's going to be terrestrial. There's no standard process. And even when it comes down to one technology, you could give 4 companies the same exact scanner and you'll get different results. And that's where I think the continued building of training processes and guidelines on how to even do best practices for capture for certain types of projects and control processes. And some of that is needed because we look at, I have started getting to the point I see some of also these mass site type projects, right? There's a single client that has 2,000 buildings across the US. How can they, as an organization, they know that they want a certain process done. They want something scanned. They need the as-built. They want BIM models to take in for a certain use. how can they do that volume of work right now when there's no single provider that can do the whole thing in a reasonable time frame? And what happens if they now say, hey, well, we'll just hire the 20 or 30 best people to do it? You're going to have very different results because there's no standard right now to say, give me, 20 certified people in, this type of scanning, so I know that the quality's there and they know what they're doing. I feel like that level of, and that's why I've been talking about the idea of a certification, even to say, here is a company that has the certification to say, just like you do in professional services. Yes, laser scanning is not surveying, it's not engineering, it's along those lines though. Yet right now we just hire anybody who owns a scanner. There's no way to know how do we know that they're qualified to a certain level?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Definitely there's, the range of quality is just all over the place. And usually the quality is not defined by the size of the company.
No, not at all.
Nope. Right? Sometimes you get a much better product from a smaller company and vice versa. It's just all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So having more resources as a company doesn't mean you figured out a good model that will provide consistent deliverables. But that's interesting. But when you talk about the standards and you talk about all the things that will increase value for the clients, right? We work with people. We talk about technology, we talk about machines, we talk about scanners and software. All those things are, tools that we use to achieve a certain result, tools that are being operated by people. And right now, you've hired a lot of people. You went through this process, hiring, firing, training. There's no school that train people in our industry.
Yep.
So how do you incentivize? My background is structural engineering, structure management. I might hire somebody that has a background in architecture, but is your company a stepping stone, right? They learn some skills and then they move on to a next company. Or is there a career path and something that they can do for the next 20 years, 10 years, even 10 years, right? And do you attract surveyors? If you do, they might not understand how buildings go together, right? If you attract architects, they don't understand surveying, right? Or other parts. And what we do is it's so complex because it involves knowing architecture, structural engineering, surveying, visualization. It involves a lot of kind of being a generalist.
Yeah.
Having that foundation that you accumulate in the first 5 years from various industries. And in my opinion, working for a large corporation, to be honest, is the best for somebody that starts and would like to transition to be more niche down the road, because they build that foundation where they're exposed to multiple projects. They're exposed to a design team, to a construction team. They know what one wants, the other one doesn't value. So people are critical for any business, but they're also very hard to attract people, and then to have a good enough mission and a good enough business model to keep them around for a decade or more.
Yep.
Right. This is a new industry. It's not like, I went to school and I said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna document existing conditions. That's what I want to do when I grow up. So what's your view on probably you had a lot of challenges when it comes to recruiting and finding a good fit for what you need.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of the industry, the lack of education and training resources available. I just this week had a guy, reach out on LinkedIn who is in, graphics and programming and just other stuff. And he's like, I see the stuff you're posting. I see this laser scanning stuff. Like, how do you get into this industry? Where do I start? How do I learn? And I'm like, well, the unfortunate part is the best way to get started is find a company that'll bring you in on an entry level, and you just have to have on the job training, because I can't say, here, go online and take these courses and you're going to learn and you're going to train, which I would love to build and have that. but it doesn't exist today. And so, like you're saying, we have to, people that are looking to actually build laser scanning, LiDAR, scan to BIM, photogrammetry, the available resources out in the industry to hire right now are very limited because the need for these technologies is growing. So they already have jobs. The only way to hire people is you have to either have a better reason, a better business. You have to offer more money. You have to have a reason that people will come work with you. And then the other option is to hire brand new people and train them. And that takes time. And one of the other difficulties there is typically you're hiring someone that's coming from another industry, like you said, maybe someone from architecture or someone from engineering or surveying. They have a certain skill set that has a certain value in architecture or in surveying.
Yep.
That now it's hard to have an entry level position that is going to pay what they're actually worth because of their other knowledge when you're having to train them from the ground up. So it is very challenging. Now, there is that benefit that if you can get through the initial training of how do you deal with point clouds or scanning best practices, that if you do bring in different experienced people, someone from gaming, someone from surveying, someone from architecture, if you're actually building a team that the goal is to be able to capture diverse spaces and create diverse models, that you are bringing in the background of different people that can help with different portions. I'm not the expert surveyor. I'm not the expert BIM modeler, but I have a surveyor and I have someone with architecture background and I have someone with, structural background. Now, as a team, we can approach a building and say, here's how we're going to control it. Here's how we're going to scan it. Here's how we're going to model it. And we have different expert people to bring into that process. So in building a team, it's difficult, it's challenging, it's expensive. And I think that's one of the reasons I really feel like we have to start building as an industry educational content, because one of the reasons we're starting our education center on our website is I have said, look, I know I am an expert in laser scanning. I can take any project and help lay out how it should be captured, what technology will work well, how we control it. I know that piece, but I know that that part, and historic preservation, and I know another guy who knows architecture really well, and that's his background, and I know someone who focuses solely on aerial LiDAR, and I look at all these experts, but all the knowledge is contained with just themselves. And there's nowhere that it's being shared and, brought into one location or courses to help train other people. And sometimes people might look at that and say, well, if you do scanning, why would you want to train other people? You're just going to train up other people who are going to take your scanning work. And I look at it and go, no, I need to hire employees. I want them to be trained. And so do you, right? Like if you had somewhere that you could say, look, go take this course, and when you're done with that month of training, you're going to be at a point I can hire you and you could start modeling with me. And yes, there's going to be ongoing training, but what if we created the content to get that initial learning curve out of the way, get the foundation built?
That can be, the training portion is obviously there are a lot of resources out there, not structured resources. You get, again, small piece of information that you can put together, but it's not aggregated.
Yeah.
It would be extremely beneficial to have aggregated information in a structured manner that somebody can just go and take a class. That can save a lot of time for other companies, have a lot of value. But then, I think we talked about this at one of the conferences that people who would want to share their knowledge, right? Because they say, if I share my knowledge, then people will know my secret. Where when you start comparing notes, like there's some small differences, but we all do pretty much the same thing. Small changes, right? So I like what Alex Hormozi says: share your knowledge, sell the implementation. And this can be a good kind of segue into marketing, like educational based marketing, that I got into last year. And, you've been on LinkedIn for actively on LinkedIn longer than I've been. Well, last year in August, I made the decision to be on LinkedIn and post every single day of the week, with the exception of the weekends. something that, I'm not selling anything, right? I'm
Yep.
sharing what I learned. I might post something about a project that might be interesting, but most of the time, like I'm addressing to a very niche audience, and with the hope that one, I will learn something from it, and I do. Like when I write about something, I need to research it. I become a better communicator because I'm practicing writing every single day. And then there are people in the background that they watch you and they listen. And this year I found one of the best person that I could not have asked for, to have better capabilities and attitude that, I hired. And it was through LinkedIn. So you get that exposure, even though you might not, for the first year or two, get work through LinkedIn, you're going to learn. And if you subscribe to 10, 20 people that have the same mentality where they share their knowledge, expecting nothing in return. And obviously, long term, because it's a lot of time that you invest in these things. Long term, you hope that you'll build an audience that will help you grow your business. But that's it's a long term game. It's not like it's going to happen overnight. So in the beginning, you're selfless, right? You're giving your time away to share your knowledge with others. And I wish more people would do that. Not just, hey, look at me, look at the scanner, like share something that is valuable.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I learned over the years, following other people. And I also found that a lot of people in our industry don't really follow like marketing and sales and leadership personnel. They don't follow them or watch videos or listen to podcasts. And I found that by doing that is what gave me a lot of insight into educational content and posting and sharing and not being afraid of sharing and giving advice and helping others be successful. I also think that there's so much opportunity, like we talked about earlier. I think there's so much opportunity in the industry, so much room for growth in the industry that I'm not afraid of someone else getting good at being, doing scanning or doing modeling or doing survey, any of the services that I've been doing. And even today, like starting a podcast and having a conference, I'm not afraid of other people starting a podcast. I'm not afraid of someone starting a conference. I encourage it. I want to support it. I want to collaborate with them. I just recently invited someone else with a podcast in our industry to come set up a podcast booth at my conference to interview people. And they're like, I don't want to like step on toes, or like, is that okay with you? And the difference is, I genuinely see so much opportunity that I want other people to be successful. There's a difference. You can see sometimes even a difference when a company genuinely believes in sharing and giving advice and giving information, even in social posts. You can tell when it is genuine and they really want to help people, or they're doing it for trying to land a sale. Like there's a difference in that content.
Yeah.
And I believe when you truly give and you truly help people, that you should do it without strings attached. You're not saying, hey, come back to me, like you need to give me business now because I helped you. Like when you actually help people and you give and give and give, you're gonna get something at some point. You're gonna get it in return. The other thing that I've learned about attention is that, someone I follow has said, the best written book or the best service is not the most sold. It's the best known, right? If you can be easy for people to remember, or to people to know about you, or to remember you, or to see you, then they'll remember to work with you. If you're the best person in the world to do laser scanning or BIM and you never talk about it because you think you need to keep all the secrets to yourself and you won't post on LinkedIn, how are people going to find you? How do people know you exist? So I believe so much in, one, the power of helping educate and giving advice is going to help our whole industry rise. And two, it's just true that if you want people to know you, you need to be in front of them at some point, and be willing to share and be willing to talk. So I think it's a great point.
I find it very strange when you put yourself out there. right? And you write on topics that are not just the technical topics, right? You might write about health. You might write about philosophy and leadership and team building. So people, they get a glimpse of your personality, because there's no way your personality doesn't come through the writing. And in a way, you develop a asymmetrical relationship, right? I see your posts, I kind of know what Matt is going through. I know what he's thinking. I know what his expertise is, but Matt doesn't know me, right? So, but what if I approach Matt, let's say 2 years from now, and there's a project where it might be a good fit, you don't have to sell yourself to me, because I already know who Matt is. Your role is to have that discovery meeting and learn about my problem, right? So instead of focusing on yourself and telling about your company and what you guys do, like, there's no need for that. The sales process now is all about providing value, right? So it's a lot more natural, right? Instead of you trying to sell yourself, you already proved what you can do and who you are over the last few years. And that's something that people, I don't know if they're aware of, but I thought about this during the business bootcamp last year, when Chris Doe asked us to think about how we buy and why we buy from others, right? And I think there was this study that proved we need to spend at least 7 hours or consume at least 7 hours of somebody's content until you feel like you have a relationship with that person, even though that person doesn't know you. You build that trust. Yeah,
no, and a lot of people, they don't understand that, and they believe that, hey, I see these guys doing social media stuff. All I got to do is go post, and I'm going to get a project, and the sharing that I do, it's so much more than wanting a project. Like, it's not just to get business. It genuinely is because I've seen what influencership and what building an awareness and having a community can do in other industries. And I see it lacking in our industry, that sometimes the things that I come up with to start, I don't even know why. I don't have a fully built plan around it. When I started the podcast, there was no goal to use that to monetize or to sell sponsorships there was no goal with that. The goal of the podcast was, I have a ton of relationships in the industry, and I feel like there's a lack of people like sharing and talking about this content. I feel that if I have a conversation and we talk about uses and technologies and difficulties, and we share that to the community, it's genuinely going to help people. It's going to get them interested in the technology, and naturally that has grown. And I look at other people that maybe I follow on social media, and I'm like, sometimes the things I like to hear from them are not just about the technology. I want to hear about the life, and I want to hear about how they're building what they're building and what they're doing and what the struggles are. And a lot of people are afraid to share things that are negative or challenging, or really be open in that way. And I think there's a lot of value, because when I look at the people that I like to work with, it's the relationships and it's the people that I want to keep that ongoing and build those relationships with and work with. People like working with people. They would likely choose a little bit lesser quality of a service because they like the person that they want to work with and they trust them as a person, than it being the best, technical option. So I think there's a lot in people starting to share and be open and build relationships. And I think they'll see that carries through no matter what they do in their career too. That's the other thing that over the last 15 years, since I was in survey, I started going to my first conference in person, and I started building relationships. Those relationships have kept with when I changed companies, when I went to a corporate role, when I started my own business. Relationships will go with you and they will carry you, and it's something that, you take with you no matter what.
Yeah. And I mean, look at this. We are an hour and 27 minutes into it. We haven't mentioned a brand name once, or being a reality capture network. We talked about reality capture as a overarching topic in business, but we didn't talk about how to push buttons, right? Which I think is equally important, right? To talk about some other topics that relate to the industry, but they're not very specific when it comes to technology.
Yeah. And, a lot of people had seen this last year. We merged in that Apex Mindset special series on our podcast. And previously, when I first started doing those, it was a separate podcast. We weren't integrated because at first I said, I feel like maybe it's going to dilute. Maybe people who are coming to us to learn about technology don't want to hear those. But as I kept going and having more conversations, I was like, it all needs to be together because we're all people. We all need to learn about mindset. We all need to learn how to overcome obstacles. We need to learn how to not be afraid of choices. We all need this type of conversation. We all need relationships. We need community. And a lot of times that is what will lead to having the connection with the experts in the technology to follow up with. So when we look at the podcast, I think there's so much value that comes out of just having genuine conversation with professionals in the industry and getting to know them and their background and how they think and what they do. And we'll follow up into deep technical conversations in webinars and in case studies and in educational content and at the conference. And so, I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And yeah, you're right. We've been at it for an hour and a half. I feel like we could keep going forever.
Yeah, this has been great. Just, especially what's interesting is when I started my business, I was all about the technology, the processes, the product. But now I'm more, I still love it, obviously, but the next puzzle that needs to be figured out was, okay, the business part, right? And some they might figure it out in the first 6 months to a year, or some it might take 5 years, right? And that's something that it will grow on you, right? How do you build a team? How do you set training programs that are effective? How do you sell? It's like, oh my God, I have like in my office, I have this, business is 90% sales, right? Without sales, there's nothing. You can have the best team, no revenue coming in. You're going to close shop in a couple of months.
Yep.
Cash flow. All those things are equally important, and sometimes more important than how good your product is, right? Obviously, you should design an offering that satisfy a certain, avatar or client, but you should equally focus your attention on the business side. Otherwise, it's like Michael Gerber says, you just have an entrepreneurial seizure.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, you work in your business, not on your business, right? Most of the time. So you just created another job for yourself. And those are the things that I find very fascinating right now.
Yeah, no, I do as well. And it's one of the reasons I want to talk about this type of stuff more. Again, initially I was like, it's going to dilute the technology discussion. But the more that I talk with people in our community, I find that there's a lot of business owners, there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of people who want to break into this that are in a different industry. And I think these discussions are really important. And if we as a community can have them together and it's industry specific and we're sharing knowledge, it also, yes, there are other business boot camps and there's other leadership training and you can go take things like that. But if we as leaders in this community can maybe even have our own leadership summit and our own business boot camp internally to help with how are we as an industry selling and what is our value and how are we pricing things? We can work through some of those things together. That's another goal that we have. And I think it's a missing piece. And I think that it can help a lot of companies that are struggling to build department, all the things you just said, building teams, building, business plan, how we're selling, how we speak, the branding of it. It's all important. And if we don't work those parts out, we won't have a business.
Exactly. So that's an extremely good point there, because without the business, without the, having a success in selling your service and bringing in money, there's no technology, right? We don't make money. We cannot invest in technology. if we cannot buy the technology, companies like Leica and Faro, and they're not going to further develop their product.
Yep.
Right. So, we're kind of that bridge between the end user, and those can be B2B relationships, and the technology developers, right? Software or hardware. And if we're not successful at selling, we're not successful at business, everything downstream from us will fail.
Yep. And you mentioned the book earlier, but we'll throw it out again for those that are interested, The E-Myth. It is a really good book. And it's true that, a lot of people who end up starting a business, usually they're a technician. They are somebody who does the thing. Someone who loves baking that decides to open a bakery, and someone who loves laser scanning decides to start a laser scanning company. And that part of the business is 10% of it or 15% of it. There's so much else that has to be built out in how you get business, how you sell business, how you manage it, how you grow it, there's so much to business that, again, I think that building a business is not for most people. There are people who should do it. Someone asked Elon Musk, I think it was, hey, how do you encourage someone, that wants to start a business but just is scared to or something? And he's like, you don't. Like, if you need encouragement, to start, then maybe you just shouldn't. It was similar to, I think it was Phil that told me this because he knows a ton about movies, but Matt Damon, someone asked Matt Damon about an acting career and Matt Damon said, you shouldn't do it. And the guy, the person's like, what? Like, that's the answer? And the whole point was like, if you don't want it bad enough that you're not willing to like just go after it no matter what, like there's a ton of difficulty. There's a ton of rejection. It's very difficult. There's a lot of processes you're not expecting. If you're not someone who really wants to take all that on, then starting a business might not be for you. Becoming an actor might not be for you. There's nothing wrong too with not being a business owner, with not being an entrepreneur. You can be an intrapreneur and you can develop a department, or you can be the number 2 or the number 3 that works, next to someone who already has started that process. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But either of those steps, you do have to understand that whole picture. And I think that book does a good job of digging into some of that.
Yeah. I would say that, if you're getting into this industry and you just decide, okay, I'm going to be a solopreneur offering these services, or probably 90% of the people are better off working for somebody else. You're going to make a lot more money being an employee than owning your own business.
Yeah.
Because, owning your own business, cash flow is cyclical, it goes up and down, and you have expenses, right? Obviously, you have expenses, and you have to market, and you have to do things that, it's like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy that kind of stuff, you don't enjoy going out and, talking about what you do, it's going to be challenging. I'm going to build it and they will come thing, not working. So you have to be actively pursuing your goals, actively talking to people and sharing your knowledge. And if you want to build a business, go for it. But it's going to be a lot of work, probably. Just to give you a quick glimpse of my daily schedule, start my day every day, 4:35, 5 o'clock, and, write, and then, take a breakfast break with my family, and then go to the office and work some more. Sometimes you finish at 5, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to work weekends because there's a deadline, and there's no one else that you can count on. It's just you, right, or your team. So you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna learn, and you need to learn from them. If you're just making mistakes and you learn nothing from them, that's a recipe for disaster. So business is I think, great experience, and it's gonna develop you as a person. You're gonna develop interpersonal skills that can help you both in your personal life as well as in your business career or professional career. You'll have to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you, recorded on camera. 12 years ago, I was afraid to make a phone call and talk for a minute in English. So you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. And I've had to learn the same thing. A lot of people, and I've shared this before, but a lot of people see me on hosting a podcast and having my own conference and being on stage, and I'm still like, I'm actually kind of a shy person, and I am afraid to walk up and talk to people. Like, if I go to a conference that people don't know me already, I have a couple conferences I go to that I know a lot of people and I love it and it's fun and I connect with them. If I go to an event that I don't really know people, you'll usually find me in the back, leaning up against the wall. I don't approach people. I have that same struggle. And yet, like I shared, I was talking with, again, internally, kind of having this conversation, and I was like, what I've learned over the years, though, is I feel that when you have a certain knowledge, you have a certain passion, you have a certain capability, and you see a way that you can use it positively, that will impact people, that will provide value, I feel like it becomes your responsibility to do it. And I feel like I know that I need to be doing what I'm doing. I know that someone else is not filling that gap of education. Someone is not filling that gap of cultivating all this content and bringing together a community and having these conversations and opening difficult conversations. I don't see someone doing it in our industry. I know how to do it. I know it needs to be done. I've learned from others. I feel like it's my goal to implement and do that. And so I have to be willing to overcome the uncomfortable process of talking, and I have to learn to develop that skill set, and I have to know that I'll get better over time and that it'll become more comfortable. And when I first started, I look back at the initial podcast episodes when I'm interviewing people,
don't do it.
and I think it's terrible and I hated it. But guess what? Like, if you don't start, you'll never get good at something. And that's, I recently interviewed, Jason from Entrepreneur Magazine, and he said one of the things that really stuck with him about entrepreneurship was talking with Ryan Reynolds, who has this background in acting and all these other things, and he also is in business. And he said, if you want to be great at something, you have to be willing to be bad at it, because when you start, no matter what you start, you're going to be bad at it. You're going to play a sport, you're going to be terrible at first. You're going to run, you're going to swim, whatever you do, it's going to be difficult and you're going to be bad. And it's, can you put up with you being bad at something for long enough to become good? And that's the part that a lot of people give up. When it becomes difficult or uncomfortable, people don't like it and they want comfort. If you want to build a business, you want to grow something, you want to learn a difficult skill set, and again, even it comes to hobbies, you want to be a really good musician, whatever it is, you have to be willing to put in the work and be uncomfortable and be seen as not good or be bad at it in the beginning in order to pursue something that, grows to great.
Yeah. And if you guys are interested to learn more about that topic, you can refer to the Atomic Habit book.
There you go.
Great. Yeah, great book. It takes about 21 days to form a new habit, regardless of that is. And we also need to recognize, Matt, that we are going through that phase when we suck and we get better gradually. We get to that place where we might master a skill or we might become an expert in the industry. When we build a team, we need to recognize that they might have to start from the bottom as well and not be arrogant. But
yep.
Right. Be there, be supportive, and help them grow the same as others helped us grow. Be patient. Right. It's just part of the process.
Yeah. And one comment I'll throw out in that vein is that I also learned over the years trying to lead people and hire people is that oftentimes, and I've done it too when working as an employee, oftentimes we want to only be seen as good and we only want to deliver the best. And when we make mistakes, often we don't want to even let people know about it. We don't want to talk about it. We want to hide it. We want to try to fix it. And I have tried to build that culture of saying, look, that is more harmful than it is, the process of as soon as you make a mistake or you don't know how to do something, that's okay. Let's talk about it, because maybe we have the answer, or maybe someone else on the team has the answer. Don't go try to do it if you don't know how to do it. Just be open and honest with, here's what I actually know, or here's the problem I'm having, or this is the mistake I made. Let's talk about it. Let's learn from it. That is how you turn failures or mistakes into learning opportunities, into building a process to avoid it for the future. But I think employees and leaders, that's where the honesty and the open communication can really make a difference in team building as well.
Yeah. And if you're hiding those mistakes and you build this environment of perfection, then what's going to happen is people will be afraid to take risks.
Yep.
Because, if Matt is like perfect in any, every way, I don't want Matt to see me as imperfect and, have all these flaws. So I'm not going to take the risk. So we need to be definitely to be vulnerable and be human.
Yeah, absolutely. And companies that want to see growth and want to see innovation grow, they have to foster that and make employees know that it's okay to try something new. It's okay to express their ideas or their feelings, or and this is something I like to say though around innovation is it's best to create an environment that they know they can try things, but also try to do it in a controlled way, as opposed to say, hey, go try whatever you want on a job where maybe it'll cost a lot, it'll cause a critical mistake. Is create an environment where innovation is okay and it's done in a structured way, and you provide an opportunity to trial new things and push it to failure. Take a technology and push it all the way to failure, so you know where it fails, you know where it doesn't work. Now you can design the process to successfully implement it in a real way in projects.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Man, I think we've covered so many topics. I feel like we could do 4 more podcasts digging into each of these different lanes, from business to marketing to sales to technical. But we might have to save some of those for another pursuit.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why I think these kinds of conversations are extremely beneficial, because we just show others that, hey, there's more than just technology behind the business, behind the industry, and we need to share what we've learned from others, and sometimes it's beneficial to learn from other industries, right?
Yeah.
Go and attend other workshops that are completely different than what you're doing daily, and you might learn something that you can apply in your own business, your own industry, and that might propagate pretty fast. So, yeah, thanks for inviting me and organizing this. I think this
of course
was great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've got maybe 2 things I'll ask you as we're kind of wrapping up, and then of course if there's anything else you want to share, you're still welcome to. But I'd like to ask one, if you could go back, we'll say 15 years, if you could go back and give yourself some advice as to where you are now and what you've learned. If you could go back 15 years, and maybe it's something you'd tell yourself, and or if there's younger people listening that are maybe in those earlier stages, maybe it'll be applicable to them. But what's something you'd go back and tell yourself, your younger self, some advice?
That is very interesting. When it comes to skill, probably I would tell myself to focus on communication only more. Because that is the source, in many cases, of our success. It doesn't matter what industry you're working in, what you're doing. Written and verbal communication, it is critical.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some things that when you ask this question, you always think back as like, okay, am I giving that advice to Silviu at 25, 15 years ago, at 25, I didn't have my frontal cortex developed enough to like, I read like, right now I'm reading books that I read 10 years ago. I was like, God damn it. Like I read this and I didn't get the message. So even if I went back right now and told myself, hey, this is what you should focus on, I would now listen.
Yeah,
because
sure.
I need to experience it myself. So when you put it that way, like try things, don't be afraid to try things to build that experience as fast as possible. If you can, invest in yourself more than in the tools, because that's going to have a longer ROI. And try to take advantage. When I say take advantage, is in a nice way. Take advantage of other people's knowledge and accelerate your learning. Right? You can go and pay $2,000 on a course and compress something that would have taken you 2 years to learn in 6 months or less, and then apply it. Take action.
Those are good. Yeah. That's an area, in all these other things we've been talking about, leadership and business. And one, I'm really excited to start having some focus around those topics within RCN, whether through webinars or we're actually even talking about, this is the first time I'll say this, but we're even talking about having a specific event at some point focused around these things, a little more niche down toward those. But it's one of the things you said is investing in yourself. That is an area that you hear from a lot of successful people is the best investment you can make is in yourself. Because again, if you learn, whether through courses or books or masterminds or coaches, and of course that's an industry a lot of people are afraid of. You get Facebook ads every day for some coach for something random, but learning and compressing what you learn and how you learn it, whether it is through a course or a conference or an event or a mastermind, I think investing in yourself is a pretty underrated area. And again, it takes the right type of education, the right type of who you're investing into and what you're going to learn from. But I think that's huge. And for people that maybe don't read books or don't listen to audiobooks or follow other podcasts, or that is a huge area of learning, finding people that share messages that are going to help you depending on the area you're looking to grow in. But love that share. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's that's something that I wish I would have known. And the other thing that I want to add is like, try to be a generalist in your 20s and try different things, because that's going to build a solid foundation. And a lot of those skills might be transferable later on. And if you're trying to connect dots, you can only connect them in the past, right? That's one thing that probably we all realize once. I mean, I'm 40 and like, man, now like all these books that I read and all the podcasts and all the people that I talk to, like, at least in my mind, the information clicks. Some things take time to mature.
Yeah. It's like we go back to the cooking, right? And the recipes. It's like over the years, the more that you read, the more that you learn from others and you invest in yourself, it's like you're gathering all the ingredients and putting them in the crock pot, right? And the crock pot doesn't cook instantly. It's on a low heat. And as you add those elements in, then in a certain amount of time, all of that's going to be ready and it's going to make sense. You learn,
cooking, right?
Yeah, it's going to be slow cooking, but you got to put the ingredients in the pot or you're cooking nothing, right?
Yeah. Let the flavors, mix.
Yep. Well, I really think there's a lot of value in things we talked about today. Hopefully it inspires somebody. And again, excited to continue to build a community where these conversations are okay, where people can reach out with questions, where we can help people in the community build relationships, and we can continue to foster that. One more thing I guess I want to leave off with is, we talked a lot about the past and a lot about things you've learned and kind of what you're working on now. What is it that's kind of current and or in your future? What are you kind of excited about, or what are you looking ahead to?
So when it comes to business, obviously, we'll adapt to whatever technologies, AI, all that stuff. They're just going to be tools that we use to serve clients and bring value to clients. But when it comes to business, for me right now is building a team that not a large team, but small enough team that can deliver high quality products. And then from there, evolve into maybe products that can, as you said, help the industry. I mean, we're struggling with this issue right now where you want to do onboarding, and I just want people to be at a comfortable level so we can speak the same language, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing out there. So my hope is that in the near future, we can develop or collaborate with other people to develop training content that will bring the industry and all the other companies at a higher level.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. It's fun looking ahead and imagining if we can pull some of these things together, how it will affect the industry and what that will look like. I love when we have a plan like that. You can look for it and you can just picture the impact that it can have because we've seen what the industry's like and the difficulties without it, and it's not there. And you can just think ahead and you're like, man, it'd be so nice.
Yep, definitely.
Well, thanks again for joining us today. Definitely a lot of good information in here. Excited to continue conversations with you as a part of the community, and look forward to sharing this out. I think that it'll definitely spark some interest and maybe some more conversations outside of technology specific.
Oh, thank you for having me, Matt.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.